How are you, Parrish?
Gary, I'm fine. How are you?
Very well. Good to have you, man. It's amped up this week because we know that no SEC team has defeated Nick Saban 3 years in a row since he's been at Alabama. In fact, a lot of SEC teams haven't defeated him at all. So the Rebels are trying to make a little history here. They got it done 2 years ago in Oxford, came back and upset the Tide last year in Tuscaloosa, benefited from 8 turnovers in those 2 games, but that's football. What does Ole Miss have to try to do on Saturday afternoon at Vaught-Hemingway Stadium to make it 3 in a row over the Tide?
Well, they need to create some more of those turnovers, and they haven't done that a lot this season. They need to play better pass defense, Gary. That's kind of the Achilles heel of this team right now. They've been really good up front. They were really good against Florida State, limited Dalvin Cook to 2.8 yards a carry in the first half. Now, he hurt them in the passing game. They got him open in space and threw the ball to him that way. But this team's been pretty good against the run, or they were against Florida State. Now, Wofford got some yards against Ole Miss with that triple option, and Ole Miss substituted freely in that game from the very beginning. So I think the 230 rushing yards that Wofford gained is not indicative of how good this Ole Miss team is along the defensive front.
And also, in fairness to Ole Miss, that's a short turnaround playing on a Monday night against a triple option team, having to come back and play on Saturday. That's something college football needs to look into, in my opinion. But you're right. I don't think that's representative of that Ole Miss front. They've certainly given Alabama trouble the last couple of years. And to be honest with you, I think even in 2012, when Hugh Freeze came to Ole Miss, they were one of the few teams that I thought physically really got after Alabama that season. They're aggressive. They slant. They stunt. And as you said, they forced turnovers the last 2 years, and that's been the key. Alabama has had their own issues offensively these first 2 games. I know when you look at the points, Parrish, you see 52 in one game, 38 in the other, but they've been inconsistent. They had penalties. They've had some turnovers. So I know Ole Miss probably feels like the game plan they've implemented the last couple of years, that'll be what they use again against this Alabama offense.
Oh, I think so. And I think one of the things last year in that game, Alabama was not settled at quarterback going into that game. They started Cooper Bateman. He had, 2 of the interceptions, or at least one. He was erratic in that start. They pull him out. They go to Jake Coker, and, Coker plays really well in the second half. They come back from a large deficit and have a chance to win. But I'm thinking the Tide's a little more settled right now, even if they are young. Well, young was not something that hurt Florida State against Ole Miss.
No, it didn't.
And I just think, the key for Ole Miss is going to be, can they get better in the secondary? And they're just unsettled there right now. They played 5 or 6 cornerbacks there the other day. A lot of these guys are young. When you're playing that many, then you really haven't identified who your best guys are yet. The loss of Kendarius Webster early in the Florida State game was a huge loss for this team. Pass defense, they were number 13 in the conference last year. Hoping to improve this year. They had a really good off season from Webster. Really thought he was going to make some strides and help them get better. And then he's gone early in the year with major knee injury.
How big a factor are the injuries for Ole Miss? I mean, to only be 2 weeks into the season, they're a pretty banged-up football team, aren't they, Parrish?
Well, they are. And to me, Webster's loss is the biggest. But every one of these other guys was playing a significant role. I mean, Eric Swinney, the first carry of his college career, 6 yards, ACL. But in the big picture of things, this was a guy they were counting on, and they knew it. This was a guy who, as a freshman, probably would have played in spite of a deep running back's position. They liked him that much. In the 2015 signing class, they committed to this guy. They only signed 1 running back. They sold out and went hard after Eric Swinney, who was one of the top 10 backs in the country, and they got him. And they really like his ability to get to his top-end speed quickly. They think he runs with strength and power. He's gone. So that's a lot of depth gone from the running back position, in addition to the fact that before the Florida State game, they found out they were losing Jordan Wilkins to an academic issue that the school took responsibility for because of what it called an administrative error. So, all of a sudden, they've gotten a lot thinner At running back, they're going to count on a freshman there who played a little bit, not much, against Wofford and Devon Penniman. They've got kind of a shifty back who will come off the bench, Eugene Brasley. But they've gotten that running back picture looks very different than it did just a couple of weeks ago. But to me, the guy they lost on Saturday against Wofford, freshman wide receiver DK Metcalf, he'd only caught 2 passes, but it was clear he was becoming their preferred target in the red zone.
Big
big 6'4" guy. Yeah, 6'4", attacks the ball. Both of his catches were touchdowns on fade patterns. That's a big loss for them. But I think they're more able to overcome an injury at receiver than they are at some other positions, particularly cornerback. That's where they're hurting right now.
Talking to Parrish Alford from the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal in Tupelo, the Ole Miss beat writer. The irony of the last 2 years, I think, is not lost going into this game, and that's that Alabama has overcome that early loss to Ole Miss both years and won the Southeastern Conference Championship in 2014, played in the first 14 playoff. Last year won the national title, while Ole Miss could not take that victory and parlay it into a trip to Atlanta. Of course, last year, the Arkansas game, unbelievable game. But is there any chatter about that? I mean, I know you're focused, the team's focused on Alabama, but how disappointing has it been the last couple of years to beat the best team in the conference, a team that very few people beat, and not be able to make it to play for the SEC title?
I don't think the talk has been about beating Alabama and not taking full advantage of that win by winning the division. That hasn't been the talk. The talk's just been more about, how close they were able to get and not pull it off. I mean, you cannot get closer to winning the West than Ole Miss got last year and not pull it off. I mean, you're not going to get closer than losing it on a fluke lateral. Now, you didn't know that at the time. You still had some football to play. But Ole Miss went 5-1 against the SEC West last year, and they lose the game to Arkansas on that lateral. And it was not a well-drawn play like you saw from Central Michigan against Oklahoma State, where the guy caught the ball, you had guys trailing, he made a nice pitch back, and all of a sudden they win that game. This was a catch by one of their best players, Hunter Henry, the tight end, and he throws it back wildly, and they get a good bounce, and they get it in the hands of a running back. It was a lot of good fortune for Arkansas. You can't get closer to winning the West and not winning it than Ole Miss did last year. So that's kind of been the talk, Gary, not so much about not taking advantage of the Alabama wins, just the fact that you were that close and weren't able to do it. And, that's kind of been the chatter.
Chad Kelly. I mean, this guy is dynamic. He's a playmaker. And we know this. When you look at the games Alabama has lost under Nick Saban, usually there's been a common denominator, and it's been really good quarterback play on the other side more times than not. Kelly had a huge game last year. Now, he is a guy that he'll make some plays for your team, and occasionally if you put him under the heat, he'll make plays for the other team too. We saw last year in the Alabama game when a ball, quite frankly, Parrish, you talk about the Arkansas game, but they got away with one last year. A ball he should have eaten. He threw it up for grabs. It hits off a guy's helmet and turns into a touchdown, which wound up being a big play. He tried to do the same thing against Florida State and didn't eat it and tried to throw it and turned into a huge turnover and changed the momentum. This guy seems to play on the edge all the time. Do you think in terms of this game, they'll try to reel him in a little bit or just say, hey, man, you've got to make plays for us to have a chance to win?
The thing they stress with Chad right now is ball protection, and he's smart enough to know that means reel yourself in a little bit. I think you're going to see him make more careful decisions against Alabama. And in all honesty, you go back, since Eli Manning, quarterback play here, turnovers, interceptions, I mean, they've been, that's been a problem. Bo Wallace was famous for having big games and big plays and also big turnovers and quarterbacks here before Bo Wallace. This is a trend that's gone on a while. I'm not sure that I'm ready to attach that label to Kelly as much as I am some other quarterbacks that have been here more recently. He's had some big turnovers in some high-profile games, but you go back and look last year after Laramie Tunsil came back into the lineup and they got an elite player there at left tackle. Chad had 13 interceptions. He had 7 of them in like a 2 or 3 game span. And he really, at the end of the season, was growing into the position. He finished the year with 31 touchdowns, 13 interceptions. You know, he was playing at a high level at the end of the season, really protecting the ball well and scoring points, leading drives. So, you know, in the first half against Florida State, it looked like he had just picked up right where he left off at the end of the season, and then came the third quarter. And when that turnaround came, it came fast. You know, it wasn't like a gradual comeback. I mean, Florida State took control of that game quickly, and they were able to do it because Kelly turned the ball over a few times there. And you can't do that against elite opponents. Walford's not a good measure for this team. He did play turnover-free, and that's important. But he needs to show that he can protect the ball and make big decisions and big plays in big games.
Wrapping up with Parrish Alford, does an outstanding job covering the Ole Miss Rebels for the Northeast Mississippi Daily Journal in Tupelo. How has Ole Miss handled, or what's your sense with that NCAA cloud that just kind of continues to hang over the program? Have Coach Freeze and company been able to keep the players buffered from that? Have you sensed that is something the players talk about it, or are they not focused and worried about it at all? Has it been a factor at all with this team, or do you sense that they've done a good job of keeping it away?
Every time you ask that question, they come back with the right answer. It's not a distraction, and we're not focused on that. We're not talking about that. I haven't seen anything in their play in 2 games that leads me to believe otherwise. I don't think it has been a distraction for this team. One thing in which Kelly has excelled as the quarterback has been preparation and video study and, basically, being prepared. I don't sense that it's a distraction for this team. I think it could become a distraction. Say you're rocking along with a pretty good season at the end of October and a ruling comes down and all of a sudden there's a bowl ban or something like that, or there's a massive hit to the program. I think it could become a distraction at that point. I don't sense that it is right now.
Finally, Parrish, and I read your little journal there on your, on the Ole Miss beat and talking about the fact that, it had been 2010, 2011 when LSU beat Alabama back-to-back years. It is difficult to do. This is a program that just hasn't lost a lot of games. Do you think maybe, though, that the Ole Miss coaching staff feels like they have found the formula? I mean, I know what you did last year doesn't necessarily mean anything this year, but do you think they're pretty confident that they've got something on Alabama that nobody else has? I don't think they're confident in a formula against Alabama per se. I just think they're confident in what they do. I think they're confident in their schemes. And when you play hard and you play with effort, sometimes you force a few turnovers. And that was, they got big special teams play in both of those wins. They got some turnovers last year when Alabama was unsettled at quarterback. I think that was a significant part of that game that kind of gets overlooked. But I don't know that it's a feeling of they have Alabama's number or anything like that. I just think this coaching staff is confident in what they do. They believe that they can compete with the best teams in the country. They certainly showed that against Florida State. And, had the third quarter, had they not unraveled the way they did, they probably walk out of Orlando with a, quote, neutral site win. And lastly, you have talked about the quarterbacks. I get the sense that you feel like Alabama is going to settle on Jalen Hurts. I'm sure Coach Freeze will get asked about the Alabama quarterback situation. Is that your feeling, that Alabama is going to kind of go with him, or do you think that they might play both? Do you think Ole Miss will prepare for him and Barnett? I'm sure Ole Miss will prepare for both. I just look at the box scores. I haven't seen video. I haven't really studied, who got the most snaps or how that was broken down. But it seemed like Hurts was who they leaned on most. Was that the case, or were those snaps? Absolutely, yeah. No.
I don't think you. Yeah, I don't think you go into the Western Kentucky game and lean on him that way if you don't think that you're getting him ready to play Ole Miss. I think you want whoever you're going to lean on against Ole Miss. That's the guy that you're going to try and prepare against Western Kentucky.
Well, it's going to be exciting. We know what the Grove will be like on Saturday. National television again on CBS at 2:30 prime afternoon time slot. Ole Miss going for 3 in a row over the Tide, and Nick Saban going for another SEC and national title. So there's a lot on the line. Appreciate the insight, Parrish, and thanks for the time.
Gary, have a good day.